There we go. Okay, so today we are doing a constitutional style analysis. My name is Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, a natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and a certified comprehensive iridology instructor. My specialty is iridology, and particularly in the clinic, I love iridology as it relates to infertility, high-risk pregnancy, and all that kind of good stuff. I wanted to take this opportunity to take a few minutes today to walk you through, just a moment, I forgot to turn on this other part. Hang on just a half a second, because what I need is, yep, I forgot to turn on my Instagram. Let's get in there and get that done super quick. It is not letting me have the video option, which is only a little frustrating. Okay, maybe we've got it now. Yay, okay, we've got it happening now. Fabulous. Okay. So again, Judith Cobb is my name. I am a master herbalist, a natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and a certified comprehensive iridology instructor. As I was saying, in my clinic, my specialty is infertility and high-risk pregnancy. That is what I absolutely love, love, love working with. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is another thing that I love working with. Beyond that, I love teaching and working with iridology. It is absolutely, it's been such a game changer in my business. And as I've mastered how to work with constitutional iridology in the setting of a clinic, it has made such a difference in how I work with my clients, how my clients trust me, the rapport we build, how well we do with having follow-up bookings, long-term clients as well, rather than one-off sessions. And so today, that is what I want to show you, is how to do a constitutional analysis and how it works in a clinical setting. So as we do this, we are going to be looking at an eye. We're only going to look at one eye from this person. If I recall, I might be lying. I might have her other eye loaded up here as well. You never know. And so I want to introduce you to this client. This client is Michelle. And Michelle is in her early 30s. She's been a client of mine for a few years now. And she had been sort of trying to conceive for about 2 years. She really had focused on conceiving for the 5 months prior to her coming in to see me. She was ultra frustrated because all of her medical tests came back perfect. I mean, you looked at them and it was like, well, why aren't you pregnant? This doesn't make sense. When we looked at her husband's sperm count and sperm quality, and that's, you know, the other half of the fertility story, right? There were some deficiencies. Now, we gave him some supplements, but he was really not impressed. He just kept saying, well, it'll happen when it happens. It's really not my problem. I'm going, buddy, your numbers are nowhere near stellar. They're actually not even good. They're barely even average. These numbers need some support. We got to do some things here to help your sperm quality. But he was really not into this. Suggested some dietary work. He really didn't want it. It's like, great. So he took the supplements, but that's all he was willing to do. And it's like, okay, that'll have some impact, but it might not have as much impact as we want it to have. So we had to really focus on Michelle. We had to really work with her and do everything we could to really make sure that she was as fertile as she could possibly be. When we started having her chart her temperatures, she had also been using ovulation predictor kits. And what we found with the temperatures and the predictor kits is that her LH surge, which usually predicts when ovulation is going to happen, would happen on about day 12 or 13. But the big giveaway that we had that said that the hormones really weren't as good as they looked on paper was the fact that when she would have a menstrual period, she would barely even need a panty liner. I mean, we're talking barely even spotting. What does that tell you? What does that suggest? If you've got someone who has, for their menstrual flow, is nothing, it tells you right up front that that there's no endometrial lining being built up. And you have to have an endometrial lining in order to have a fertilized egg implant. And if you've got a good endometrial lining, you have a menstrual flow, not a sort of a menstrual spot, right? And so we knew that in spite of what the lab tests said, that we needed to do some work with her. The challenge with lab tests is they are a one-off thing. Like when you do a progesterone test, it's day 3 or day 21. And one lab test at one spot in time doesn't tell you a thing. It does not tell you what the overarching things are that are going on. It gives you no understanding whatsoever. And so we needed to really work with this. She also, as we worked together, I taught her about ovulation mucus and how important it is to have that really nice, rich, gooey flow of the mucus at ovulation, that ideally we want it to be 4 inches of stretch. So it starts out tacky, it gets stretchier, stretchier, stretchier. And at ovulation, it's a good 4 inches long. Well, she had virtually no mid-cycle mucus, which really suggested that if she was ovulating, and her temperature chart suggested she was, she obviously didn't have the hormones in quite the right balance to actually facilitate conceiving and implantation. So as we looked at this, we recognized that on her own, she probably could not get pregnant just with that information. But then we turned to her eyes. What we saw here, and we're going to do this strictly from the constitutional perspective. If you've got a Jensenian or a Dr. Morse or a Dr. Pesic background, what I'm going to teach you today, what I'm sharing with you may be vastly different. With constitutional iridology, it's not about telling the client what's wrong. It's about looking for inherent patterns in the eyes. And when we see those inherent patterns that are not going to change when we change the diet and things like that, we then understand how this body is put together. And it will usually explain for us why this person has the imbalances and the symptoms that they have. And so we use the iridology to give us a deeper understanding of what is going on, not to create a whole new story. When we look at this beautiful eye, this would be a lymphatic eye. We know that beautiful lymphatic eyes are very prone, their owners are prone to being a little over acid. So they're more prone to things like allergies, asthma, arthritis, skin problems like eczema, psoriasis, kidney problems, those kinds of things. So when we see this kind of a lovely lymphatic eye, those are the questions we need to ask. Is there a personal or family history of asthma, allergies, arthritis, skin problems, kidney issues, any of those? Because again, this is inherent. It's not just this person's body, it's what has been passed down from the last 2 or 3 or 4 generations. So if we know that grandma was covered in eczema head to toe, we know that this person has an increased risk of doing that. We also understand what eczema is, that it is a chemical imbalance, it's a pH imbalance, an acid imbalance that is often triggered by different things that are not working properly in the liver and the digestive tract and so on and so forth. So we need to ask those questions. Constitutional is about asking the questions. So we ask those questions. Now, when I asked her specifically about her diet, because diet is where we get most of the acid imbalance predisposition from, right? If you eat a high acid diet, lots of red meat, lots of white flour, lots of white sugar, lots of dairy products. That's going to make your body chemistry more acidic. So I asked her about her diet, and her diet was really good. Mostly organic, lots of fresh produce, lots of good nuts and seeds, nut butters, lentils, legumes, leaning towards the vegan side of things a little bit there. A little bit of animal protein, not much, but there were two areas that she was deficient in. And the first one was she did need more protein. And she was actually willing to add a little bit of organic animal sourced protein. So we suggested organic poultry and some eggs. We also noted that there was probably not enough fat in her diet, not enough good fat. So important, especially if we're working with hormones and fertility. We need the good fat. As we looked at her eyes, we also noted there's lots of this oat straw yellow. Oat straw yellow gives us more questions to ask, and those questions have to do with the acid balance and kidney function, not bladder, but kidney function. And so we asked those questions again. And we asked about the kidneys because she's lymphatic, and if she's had some kidney issues, or she's lymphatic and if she's got some acid issues, then we know diet and kidneys may not be functioning fully. So we're digging a little bit deeper. Then we noticed that she has some very tiny pigments. Now, those of you who are watching this on Instagram may not be able to see these because the resolution shooting this through my camera for you may not be great. But when we see these brown pigments, they suggest that the liver wants to get its fingers into everybody's business. It wants to have a bit of an imbalance of its own, and it wants to be making everybody a little bit miserable. The liver can do that. It does over 500 jobs that we already know of. When I went to university, I did 50. So in the last 40 years, actually that class was 25 years ago. Last 25 years, they found 450 more things it does. I keep Googling to find out if they found more. So far, the 500 number has not gone up, but I'm waiting for them to uptick that any day now. So that made me think, I wonder if she has a problem with MTHFR. Do you know what MTHFR is? I don't have time to go into that in great detail right now. Basically, it's a liver enzyme issue where she lacks an enzyme to take the non-methylated B vitamins and methylate them so she can use them. The challenge with that is if she's getting B vitamins in the wrong form and she's not able to methylate them, it will compromise her fertility. Bottom line. So she would have no idea about that unless she was tested for it. But I had that suspicion right out of the starting block, just from the things that she had mentioned. We also note that she's got all of these closed lacunae that are attached to the collarette. This tells us that she has an increased risk of hormonal imbalances, particularly adrenal, pancreas, and thyroid. Well, you probably already know that thyroid is the third ovary. And if the thyroid's not quite on track, then nothing beneath it, endocrinologically, that's a new word for you. We just made up a word, is going to work either. So then we look and we see all of this stuff, this smudging around the edge here. A little bit of it here too. Yeah, that teaches us that we need to ask her about her lymphatic system. Now, lymphatics wasn't my first focus because her question was about getting pregnant. And so I really was focusing on things for pregnancy, but I'm making mental notes about these other things. We see she's got the dark edge to her eye, which is called a scurf rim, and it suggests her skin doesn't eliminate acids properly. And of course, that is going to put extra stress back onto the kidneys to eliminate acids. So asked her again if there were any skin problems, which I would fully have expected with her having the lymphatic eye. She, however, had no skin issues, which is good. And it probably had an awful lot to do with the fact that she has such a really clean diet. Then we looked at everything inside here. And what we see is there's a gray edge. We see that it looks ever so finely like someone took little teeny scissors and snipped the edge. So that means that there are some questions we need to ask her about how well she digests, particularly her proteins. Well, that was one of the reasons why she sort of leaned towards vegan, is because she really didn't feel like she digested her proteins very well. That's easy enough to support. So do you see how important it is, as we're doing iridology, to actually have access to the client to gather more info as the assessment continues? That's one of the weak links that we often see in people who are doing iris analyses in a social media setting. They don't get to ask the questions. They're looking and they're saying, lacuna here would be a problem in the pituitary. Lacuna here, this is a left eye, so this is coming out through the heart region and through the lung region. And this is all coming in through the lung region. And this is all right. And so they're lasering in on details, but they have no way to ask the client if these are areas of concern. In constitutional iridology, we don't dissect and bisect. Again, we look for overall patterns. And our first goal with the client is always to address the exact thing that that client wants us to address, right? We start with their interest, and then we can, once we've got progress there and we've gained their trust, we can start looking at other things. And so really important to always address your client's best interest first. This is the client's right eye, and very similar to the left eye. Again, we've got the tophi, the smudging around the edge, where it suggests that we've got some lymphatic involvement. Well, I did ask her about her lymphatics, and of course, most people haven't got a clue what they do. So we talked about immune system. Does she fight things off? Well, yes, she does. She doesn't get sick very often. Great. Is she physically active? Because that physical activity is key for helping the lymphatic system to flush, and she's very active, so that was good. So then I had to ascertain, is she too active? And that's an important thing to know, because if she's trying to get pregnant and she's too active, that can mess up her hormones as well. Again, we saw the very same indicators in this inner area here. We saw a hint of a scirphrem here. And again, I suspected that because of the brown pigments I saw in her other eye, that she probably had the MTHFR defect. Now, of course, she didn't know that, and there isn't a lab here in our city that will actually run the MTHFR test. Anything where it went through a fad, which MTHFR did a few years ago, the labs shut down that testing. And so she actually did 23andMe. And it came back that she truly has the MTHFR defect. So this is the very same eye with different lighting. Now I want you to have a look. We're going to flip back an image, and you see when the light is coming right from the front, we can see a little bit of the texture down here where we've got these rings coming around in the eye. Do you see when we turn off one of the lights, we're now casting shadows? And again, on Instagram, this might not be quite as clear for you, but do you see that these rings become much more prominent? We can see them more clearly. We can see more of them as well. Well, this really suggests that she burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium at record speed. So I asked her, how does she handle stress? She's a worrywart. She's very anxious. She worries about every little thing. She's in a super high stress job in human relations, where she is responsible for helping employees that have problems and connecting them with the right kinds of services. She's also responsible for firing people. Now that is high stress. So because I suspected that she was MTHFR, and that was actually the biggest reason why she was not conceiving, because again, she had a good follicular phase, a good luteal phase, she had a good temperature jump. She just didn't have the hormones in place, and she to actually have the mucus or to build the endometrial lining. So we needed to get in there with the right supplements for that as well. But what we ended up doing was, when she did the 23andMe and she found out she was MTHFR, she got panicky. She sent me an email that I could tell from the tone she was extremely upset. By this time, she was actually pregnant by about 4 months. She was so concerned that this MTHFR was going to mess up her pregnancy and hurt her baby. And I was able to say, you know what? I had a suspicion from what I saw in your eyes that that was the case. The vitamins that I've got you on for prenatal vitamins have got you covered. Everything we are doing is to support you as if you had MTHFR. So you've got nothing to be concerned about with that. We've covered that base. And she was super, super excited that I had done that. And she asked, how did you know? And I said, there was the marking in your eye, a very tiny indicator that really led me to believe that that would be the case. If she hadn't been MTHFR, the things that I was doing would still have been supportive. They would still have been appropriate. They were not so specific to MTHFR that it would have messed anything else up. So again, we did that. We did quite a few other supplements with her. Again, this is the image that has the one light in it. Now, as we look at this, we also want to consider that iridology traditionally was just the iris. Now, most of the time, when at least all of the time when I teach, I also include the sclera, because we know that the iris is genetically influenced, right? It is the blueprint. It is the inherent potential of the person. The sclera is very dynamic. The sclera tells us what is going on in the body right now. The sclera also gives us warning about things that are preclinical, things that are subclinical, things that wouldn't even show up on a test. It shows it before there's a problem. So with this being the right eye, what we noticed is the congestion here suggests that there might be a bit of a concern with the thyroid. And while she did have a follicular phase and a luteal phase and a clear temperature jump between the two of them, all of her temperatures were lower than I would have liked them to be. And that, of course, suggested that she probably had a bit of a subclinical thyroid issue. And so we added supplements for that as well. And it was the sclera that tipped me off to that. When I combined this with her temperature chart, there we go. When she hadn't yet conceived, what we found was that about 4 months after starting to work with her, that she was starting to need a pad for her period. I mean, before she didn't even use a panty liner most of the time, even when she was having her period. And so we got her to where she actually needed a light pad. We were so excited, right? So excited about that. And she had gotten up to 2.5 inches of mucus stretch, which was amazing. Now, the medical literature says 2.5 inches is just enough. If you look back in medical literature from 20 years ago, they say 4 inches is optimal. And so we were still working towards the 4 inches. Just a few months later, she actually had a positive pregnancy test. Now, she was really a nervous Nellie through the pregnancy because she tends to be pretty anxious. So we kept in really close touch. I didn't have to go back to her eyes for anything because I knew her well. I knew her eyes well. I knew her case. I knew who she was. I knew how to work with her. And so I was able through all of that to just simply literally support her through the pregnancy. She had her baby at the end of August. She had a beautiful bouncing baby boy. So how did having her iris photos actually help me? How did it help me understand what she needed? And how did doing this constitutionally to understand how the markings all work together, how did that help me? Well, the first thing that did was it helped me to understand that with being polyglandular, having all those closed lacunas, that her hormonal system would probably not be in really good balance, that we were going to need to do some support there. And combining that with the fact that she had that little bit of a brown pigment is what led me to understand that she probably would have the MTHFR issue. And understanding all of that and seeing the contraction furrows, I understood the importance of getting her the B vitamins in the right form to help her control the anxiety that she was so prone to experiencing. The beauty of the constitutional iridology, again, is that we ask questions. We ask lots of questions. We see a marker and we want to understand, how does this correlate to the problem the client has? What further information does this marker give to inform what I want to do with this client? I actually, with constitutional, never need to analyze every single little itty bitty marker in there. That's overkill, and it's so not necessary because every marker is absolutely not important. Absolutely not. A complete iris analysis, really, when I'm with a client, takes only about 5 minutes because I'm focusing on the things that they need to know now. I'm focusing on the things that I need to understand, and that is not every little detail. We need to, with constitutional, we're always looking at the big picture. What are the patterns we see? How do they interrelate with each other? How do they work together to give us a deeper understanding of what is going on in the body? So that's how we do an iris assessment using constitutional iridology. Now, I've taken a lot longer to do it here with you right now. It's been like 25 or 26 minutes. In a clinical setting, seriously, I take the photographs, pop them up on my computer, and as far as looking at the eyes, it's maybe 5 to 10 minutes. It's about streamlining the work, getting rid of doing long reports on my own time after hours. That is the beauty of constitutional iridology. Now, for those of you who have joined me live, just wanted to throw this in that I do have an iridology course starting on November 7th. And if you would like to get more information on that, go to iridology.education/priority. And that will give you lots of information about the course so that it will help you to decide whether the course is right for you. And certainly if you have questions about the course, please reach out to me. I'm not going to do a heavy-handed sales pitch here because I just don't think I need to. So thank you so much for being with me. And again, pop over to iridology.education/priority to see all the details about the class. And if you need more information, just reach out to me and I will be happy to address those questions. Thank you so much for being with me today. I truly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you again on Instagram Live and on the webinar on Tuesday at 11. I don't remember what our topic is that day, but Tuesday at 11, hopefully I will see you there. And if you're in my Facebook group, iridology.education, you will also receive and see the link for the Tuesday session in that Facebook group. So there you go. Take good care. And Lynette, thank you for joining me on the webinar. I'm so glad you loved this. I hope you'll be able to join me on Tuesday. And we will see you later. Have a great weekend. And if you're in Canada, happy Thanksgiving. Bye for now.